everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it is my pleasure to welcome Eugene Chang. Hey, Eugene, how are you?
Hello. How are you, Blair?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, no. The honor is completely mine, sir. So Eugene and I, we go way back. Like before my children, before my marriage, before college, we run all the way to high school even probably.
Yeah.
And we've, been a little bit disconnected for a little while, but I'm so thankful that we have this opportunity, to share life once again through this podcast, this platform. Sorry it took me so long.
Thank God for Zoom. Thank God for technology, right? I mean, thank God for fast internet, so.
Yes, for real though. Like, I'm so thankful. I'm even like, I say this hesitantly, but even COVID has brought a new kind of value to these types of relationships and this technology in itself, right? Like just communicating with people. So, all that to say, Eugene is here to tell us what he does, his day to day, what it looks like, and I don't even really know, so I'm just gonna pass the baton. So, Eugene, what is it that you do?
So let me just share where I work. So
Yes.
I work for Tropical Smoothie Cafe, which is a QSR, a quick service restaurant brand, right? So liken it to Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, all those brands. So I'm the senior manager of IT operations and support. So I always say that my title is very long, and because it encompasses there's two parts to it. There's operations and support. So I'll break that down a little bit. But my main function with Tropical Smoothie Cafe is I serve as the liaison between our operations partners. Operations figures out how do we do stuff. Whether it's in our restaurants or whether that's within our corporate infrastructure as well. So, they create operational guidelines. I translate that into technology to say they want to do something. Let's say I want my guests to be able to order curbside. How do I enable that with technology? And vice versa. Let's say I have cool technology that I believe could be beneficial for our restaurants. I say, here's what we have. Hey, I work with our operations partners to say, hey, how could we roll this out so that our restaurants, we call them cafes, so how our cafes could use that technology and use it effectively to serve our guests.
Wow. Okay. So, my first question is this. I've actually never been to Tropical Smoothie Cafe, but I know exactly where one is,
Okay.
on my road. So I'll probably check it out this week. But
Yes,
but
please.
and so is this a nationwide franchise?
Yeah, so a little bit about Tropical Smoothie. We have about 900 locations nationwide, so we're only national. We're not international yet, right? So we started in Destin, Florida, right? And then, we kind of grew a few franchises down there, and then eventually the headquarters moved to Atlanta, and then from there we just kind of exploded. So, we're adding about 100 new locations every year, which is unheard of in the QSR industry. If you liken it to some of the big brands, you're talking about like Chick-fil-A, some of the other Chipotle, Burger King and stuff like that. Burger King, they're probably opening, nationally, maybe 20 locations a year. We're opening anywhere between 100 to 130 locations a year. So
Wow.
our company is in super high growth mode right now. So we're exploring new markets. We're expanding in our existing markets. So right now, Georgia is one of those hot spots right now where you're going to see a lot more locations. If any of your listeners are around here, we have locations popping up all over the place right now. So be on the lookout for your nearest tropical smoothie.
Yeah. I mean, so even with the pandemic though, how has that affected your company?
It's crazy in that the QSR industry as a whole obviously took a hit with COVID, right? But because of, what COVID did was it forced I don't want to say even just QSR, but all industries as a whole to think more digitally, right? So how do I get my groceries more efficiently without having high contact, without going into the locations? How do I get my medicines? How do I interact with anyone without without having to actually go to a physical location or be around people anymore. So in the same way, Tropical Smoothie was always well positioned as a healthier option than your McDonald's or Burger Kings or Taco Bell's, where in a pandemic people are caring more about number one, being more health conscious, but also at the same time it's like something that will travel with them very easily. Like a smoothie is a perfect thing where you can just pick it up and just sip on it for an hour or two and it'll be perfectly fine and tasty. So it's been one of those things where we've been very well positioned to be able to grow even in a pandemic here, where other QSR brands have struggled to even stay flat or get as close to flat as possible.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting to hear. And I never would have expected that answer, honestly, because, I think in my head, a lot of restaurants and places that people gather, cafes, for example, would have taken a really huge hit. But it's interesting that, a smoothie is something that you don't need to sit in a restaurant to get. You just get it and you go and you want it always. Who doesn't want a smoothie?
Yeah.
But I mean, with all that being said, everyone's going digital now and is focusing on that, like you mentioned. So I would imagine a senior manager of technology for a corporation like this has been very busy for you in the last year.
Sure. So I mean, the past year, because of the pandemic, if I look at the projects, at the very beginning of 2020, and again, March of 2020 is when all of this kind of went down with the pandemic. But when we were planning for 2020, we had a list of things that we wanted to achieve. And by March, all that went out the window, right? And so by March, when the whole country was shutting down, right, we were affected by it as well. So at a certain point, we were at negative 40% of our expected target. So, we were very much in the red, right? So what did we do? We took all those projects that we had on our plate and we threw them out the window and we said, okay, how do we get back to the place of just even becoming even, right? How do we serve our guests where they won't be coming to our cafes anymore? How do we serve them where they are? So the drastic 180 to less focus about the in-cafe experience, but more about the digital experience. We all of those projects came to the forefront. Right? We always had them, but primary things. We had an app. It wasn't great. We launched a new app within, a few months. We had a website. It wasn't great. We revamped our website. People were going curbside. Our curbside experience we rolled it out within about 2 weeks of development. So all of these things with the guest in mind of meeting them where they are. I had from a personal standpoint, is all of those technologies are happening as, again, digital technology, they're all, kind of correlated with each other. But it's about, okay, there's all these technologies out there. How do we best incorporate that you can't spend years developing this. You have to be able to bring it to market in the time when people want it. Right. So in that aspect, I listened to the episode with you were interviewing Jonathan, the product manager, right? I mean, so we have a product team, and we said to them, it's like, hey, our app kind of sucks. How do we develop a new app, right? And so they took that product and developed it and said, what do you want that product to do, right? Okay, so we want you to be able to, order more easily. We want to be able to order delivery. We want to be able to integrate with DoorDash and Uber Eats and all this other stuff, right? And so they took that and they developed an app, and then now it's like, we integrate with all of those things where in the past we didn't, So it's just reprioritizing all of those things. And, we did that as a company. I wasn't the one that said, hey, we got to do this, right? I was more of the guy that said, how do we do this? And how does it get executed in the cafe? Right? We're enabling all these technologies in our cafes. How does the crew member, how does the 18-year-old behind the register start getting Uber Eats orders? Or how are they supposed to handle all of these new transactions that are coming in? So be more efficient, figure out like how do I operate in this new world where I may not see a single guest come through my doors anymore, but you're still going to get a high volume of traffic through digital orders. So it's just shifting that mindset.
Yeah, and it's almost like I mean, you're forced in a place that the industry was going towards anyways, just a lot
Yeah.
quicker,
Hmm.
in a short period of time. And so I'm curious, like, what does a typical day for you look like then? Like, what does that consist of? I mean, I know as a manager, I can like kind of assume that I feel like you're kind of like, okay, figuring out what gets done and who needs to get what done at a certain time. But
Yeah.
yeah, could you break it down a little bit for me?
Yeah. So my typical day is, we have a list of projects that we're all working on, right? So again, we're a lean Tropical Smoothie total as a company. You're talking about with field people, maybe about 100 employees total, right?
Okay.
So it's not a huge company, right? So our IT team is, at one point we were probably about 20 people. Because of COVID, we're probably down to like 10-ish or so.
Wow.
So we're having to wear multiple hats
Yeah.
in the current state. So my typical day is to have a stand up with all of our team members to say, okay, what are we working on today, right? What is everyone working on today? So we have different projects that are always ongoing. And then at that point, we say, okay, what do we want in that project? What do you want to accomplish today, right? So we accomplish that. And then as well as, honestly, my day is just meeting with like all of my other counterparts. So with our operations team, with our marketing team. For example, our marketing team, every couple months we come out with like a new, we call it LTO or limited time offer or a promo item, right? To say, oh, for the month of July, here's this new watermelon smoothie, right? That's like, kind of for the season or whatever it may be. So like that doesn't just get created like out of thin air. Like no one just presses a button and all of a sudden like this item lives in these digital channels or whatever. Like we have to create those through technology, right? So what I do is in regards to all of these projects that are going on, what do I want to accomplish that day? And then at that point, I kind of task each one of my team members to say, okay, you're tasked with accomplishing this today. You're chasing down this today. You're chasing down this. So we take it in a daily, we call them sprints. So we work in 2-week sprints. We say, hey, what do we want to accomplish during this 2-week sprint?
Wow.
And then every single day is working towards that 2-week end goal. So that's pretty much my day. Every single day is just working those. And then the other half of my title is IT operations and support. So I have a team of 20 team members in India that we outsource our tech support. So while I'm over here creating technology processes for our cafes, there are people that have issues with those technology processes and all these systems that we have. So I manage our tech support team over in India, and they handle all of like kind of the first level resolution, and then anything that kind of bubbles up as they don't know what to do, they bring it up to me, and then I talk with my operations counterparts to say, okay, how do we want to handle this?
I
Right?
see.
Create a process there.
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot, I feel like, to have to like account for each day.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so could you give me like a more tangible example of like the part where you said like, being a liaison for like operations and
Mhm.
translating it into tech?
Yeah, yeah. So perfect example is we've launched a revamped curbside solution, right?
Okay.
So in the past, right, when I mentioned that just to have a curbside functionality available in our cafes, we've developed something like very quickly within 2 weeks, and we kind of put it out there, right? Knowing that it wasn't perfect, but just knowing that we needed to meet the demand, right? So what we are currently doing is we just launched a new curbside solution, a revamped one, where now, so in the past, people would place a curbside order, and we would have no idea when they would arrive. People would be waiting in the parking lot and be like, "Where's my food?" And we would want them to call the cafe during lunch hours to say, "Hey, I'm here in this car. Bring it out to me." People would be, the crew member would be like, "Where are you?" kind of thing, right? So that was the 1.0 experience.
Sure.
So our operations team obviously took all that feedback back from our cafes to say, "Hey, we have no idea when our guests arrive. We have no idea who to look for. We have a lot of angry people that are trying to contact us during lunch rushes, and we have crew members running across busy parking lots trying to find cars. Like we can't do this. Like it has to be better, right? So operations, they're the ones that listen to that feedback and create better operational guidelines to do so. And so the feedback that we got is like, number one, we have to know where the guest is. Like it shouldn't be that they had to call a phone number so that they notify us when they arrive. So now we have a solution where when they place an order and they place a curbside order, we ask them, like, hey, can we track your location so that as you come closer, we will send you alerts, right? So we know exactly where a guest is on their journey. So for example, let's say someone placed an order for pickup within 15 minutes, right? As soon as they place that order, a clock starts for us. It's like, okay, we have 15 minutes to make this food and have it ready for this guest to arrive. We make that food, and then obviously as they come closer, we get notified to say, hey, the guest has now entered the, we call it a zone, but a pickup zone, right? And at that point, the guest will then be alerted to say, hey, your food is on its way, right? And then at that point, the crew members will grab the food. They will know the car model, based on the transaction information. They will know exactly the guest name. They will know exactly what car they're driving. They will know exactly to the parking spot. We can zoom on the map. We can zoom in to see exactly where in the parking spot that they are. So They will say, hey, this guest is in parking lot A3. So we have a corresponding one to say, okay, I need to go to A3 and then give them the food. So that's a good example of operations coming up with a need. We develop the technology to enable those operational guidelines, and then kind of working with each other to make sure that how I look at technology is we never make up stuff on our own, right? There has to be a need for it, right? Sure, there's we could have robots in our cafes making smoothies if we wanted to, right? But it's the need there, right? So just because the technology exists doesn't mean that we do it, right? The need has to be there, right? So kind of like the podcast with Jonathan, it's like there has to be a need and there has to be value in that, right? So operations, marketing, whoever, the franchisees could say, I have a need, and then I try to see how we can enable it with technology.
That's pretty cool. So like, okay, in this particular example, right? So the operations came to you with the need, and then so you sat down with your team, or like, this is the need, and then do you guys just like brainstorm together?
So we have development teams and we have vendors that handle like the product or development of the product. Right?
I see.
So
okay.
What my role is like, okay, now we have this new shiny new toy or new technology that now we can play with. I then need to translate, okay, here's what this new technology can do. So operations, here's what you can now do. I can show you what it can do. Let's create operational procedures together to say, okay, now that you have much more capability, how do we develop processes around it?
Okay, that makes sense to me, especially for somebody that's not tech savvy. I would need someone like you, like a translator. It's like
exactly.
Can you tell me this is cool, but what does it matter? Is basically
exactly
okay.
Right. So I tell them, it's like, hey, now A, B, and C is possible. Like, let's create processes where the cafes can actually use this now. So that's mainly my role.
Man, as you're talking though, Eugene, I'm like, just what I know about you, I'm like, this job is like for you. Like I think, for those of you that many of you don't know my background with Eugene here, but we worked in church ministry together for a while and other things. And I just feel like, man, this is like so your job. And I want to know, like, do you feel that way?
Thinking about, talking with you like for this podcast, I was thinking about, most of the time, and I've watched a few of these past episodes where like a lot of times where people are called to do certain things.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like whether it's a pastor, whether it's a doctor, like those kind of very specific. I truly believe not anyone can do those things. Right. Whether it's a stay-at-home mom or like any of these things, like you have to be called to do certain things. Now, also at the flip side, I truly believe that everyone has gifts and talents that God gives to us, and I believe I fit that mold better. Where out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I majored in marketing, right, which I don't do today. I work with marketing, but I'm not in marketing today. I've never been in marketing ever since out of college, right? And out of college, I've worked at different industries and different positions, and the common thread between all of them is problem solving, right? There is a need. How do we fix it, right? Through an existing process, through an existing product, whatever, or a new process or product, right? So thinking creatively to solve a problem, right? So to your point, I'm not necessarily tech savvy. I didn't go to I don't have an engineering background. I don't know coding. I don't know any of these things. I just know that there are needs all over the place within the world of our business and outside of our world as well. There's tons of needs everywhere. But for Tropical Smoothie Cafe, how can we enable that with technology? What is out there and what is feasible for us to be able to implement right away so that our cafes can benefit and our guests can benefit as well.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel like, honestly, I'm a broken record at this point in all the podcasts that I do. It's like, I love hearing about these jobs that I never even think about, but are so important and so valuable in the sense that like people have certain giftings and they just don't know where to apply them, right? And I feel like this is a job where, you don't even really think about it existing until maybe you're several years out of college and somehow you end up where you are today. So with that being said, it's like, can you tell me how did a marketing major end up in a position where you are at Tropical Smoothie Cafe?
Yeah, so
start from the beginning. Like just tell me.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see this title. It's like when I grow up, I want to be a senior manager of technology operations and support for a smoothie shop.
Yeah.
that's it's funny. It's funny to say, but again, going back to like the common thread of my life, it's just like I've always been creative, but not the artistic creative, right? Not the like I can't draw, I can't paint, I'm not particularly like artistic in that sense. But I've always tried to figure out. I see a need, I see a problem, and I try to creatively fix it. Not being an insider to that problem. So, like for example, let's go back to like something that we could relate to is like, we had a need back at church where there was no youth praise team. It's like I wasn't a youth pastor. I never led praise or anything like that. But like I saw a need and like I put on my critical thinking hat. It's like, okay, how do we make this happen?
Yeah.
Right. So in the same way, all of those life experiences, going back to your original question of like, how did I get here? Right. Again, in college, I didn't have the traditional parents or Asian parents where, lawyer, doctor, I didn't have that. I didn't have that pressure from my parents. They said, you can do whatever you want to do whatever makes you happy. Right. Which is kind of like the other end of the spectrum of like normal Asian parents, but also very intimidating as well because of the fact that you have no idea. Like they're saying you could do whatever you want. You go figure it out. Where a lot of other people, they have parents to kind of guide them, whatever it may be. Again, I'm not saying one is better than the other. Probably neither is very great, to be honest with you. But I had that opposite problem where I didn't go on that pre-med track. I didn't go on that pre-law track. Like I had no idea what I was going to do. And so even my choice of I went to University of Georgia for college, obviously. We have a lot of connections there as well. But when I went to UGA, that was a last minute decision because I was to the 11th hour, I was going to go to Georgia Tech. And because
I did not know that.
It's a better school, like all these different things.
Yeah.
But in my head, when I didn't know what I wanted to do at Georgia Tech, I could do like one of three things, right? Like engineering, architecture, like business, right?
Yes.
And I wasn't sure about any of those things. So because of like the liberal arts school at UGA, I just felt like I would have more options, right? So at the 11th hour, I switched over to UGA, and that's where I went, So. And, went through college, graduated, still not knowing what I was going to do. I graduated in 2007, which was the worst time to graduate, right? So, I mean, that was right in the beginning of our financial crisis during that time. And I would say for a couple years, I had a hard time even, originally my plan was to go into some marketing firm or ad agency and just working my way up from there. But the first thing that got cut during that crisis was marketing. Like no one's spending extra money on marketing. We're just trying to survive. So again, it was for a couple of years. I was just like kind of working part-time jobs and just trying to just make some money out of college, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, get my foot in the door anywhere, right? Eventually, through a referral, I got hired at a logistics company, right, where I was onboarded as an equipment analyst, right? So what I did there was, those like big container ships, So I worked for one of those companies that had those ships, had those containers and stuff like that. My job as an equipment analyst is not how do I get these containers if we have a surplus in one area, how do I move them to another area around the world, right? So again, it's just problem solving. Right? We have too much inventory here. I need to hire some people, or I need to make some bookings so that this inventory will go to another area. Right? So it's just problem solving at that point.
Yeah.
So through that, I got referred to another job at a completely different industry. I went to Bank of America Merchant Services, which is, if you're not familiar with what merchant services is, it's like credit card processing, right? So, it's not even the credit card or the bank. It's literally when you swipe your card, where does that information go to? That's the company that I work for, right? But there I was hired as a business analyst, and I helped stand up a project management team, right? Again, we had all these project managers doing their work on their own, but never going back and reporting as to what they're doing. How are your projects doing? How are you on budget? Are you on time? Anything at risk, right? So I helped develop a project management office where all those project managers now need to report into this, this one central place, and everyone could be measured by the same criteria at that point.
Yeah.
So again, just problem solving. From there, I got recruited. I got recruited to Popeyes. So I got recruited to Popeyes from there through an old manager at Bank of America Merchant Services. And then from there, I helped do the same thing. And then from there, I got recruited to Tropical Smoothie.
Wow.
So none of my jobs, again, it's not through my skill set or anything like that, but it's purely through, number one, it's just knowing what I was good at and just making it known to my colleagues what I was good at. I'm not here developing stuff. I'm not here coding stuff. That's not my forte, right? I just know how to, for lack of a better word, get things done.
Right.
Figure things out and get it done. Mm-hmm. There's a problem, figure it out, get it done.
Yeah.
So that's what my reputation became known for. And it's crazy to think that all of my past, in the past 10 years of my career, I didn't apply for any of these jobs. I didn't go searching for them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They came and said, we need your skill set, come join us.
Wow.
So even what I do today, that, it wasn't my original role at Tropical Smoothie, but because of my skill set, they elevated me to the position that I am now.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm going to encourage anyone, is that you don't need to know what you want to do, but you need to know what you're good at and what you love to do.
Yeah. So how does one figure that out? Is the real question.
I think a lot of it is through trial and error. A lot of it is being exposed to a lot of things, right? So again, I went from a logistics industry to a banking credit card processing industry to the food industry, and now in the food technology industry. So again, I didn't study any of this in college, and nor did I know that I would end up on this path. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe 5-10 years from now, I'll be in a completely different industry applying my same skill set that I learned, in the first 10 years.
Sure, yeah.
But I think what it comes down to is just being exposed to a lot of things and just finding your niche, right? Just finding where you fit. Again, everyone has a skill set, and if you think of it as like a cliche puzzle or whatever it may be, like who are you? You are one piece of that puzzle for an organization, for a church, for your family, for anything. You're always a piece of a puzzle, and depending on where you are, you may be a different piece, but you're still a piece, right? We call it the body, whatever it may be. Like different parts of the body, right? So in that regard, you need to figure out what part of the body are you, and just do it well. Like just work on it, excel at it. Just if you're the hand, just be like the best hand that you can be. If you're the foot, be the best foot that you can be, right? And yeah, I think it's good to be able to try new things and realize, hey, this isn't for me. That's just as valuable as well. I went through many times like that, but I think the common thing is like you don't like. It's okay if you don't know, like if you feel like God or like whoever like it's like doesn't give you that like lawyer like like passion right from birth, right? Like not everyone is like that, and I would say the vast majority of people are not like that,
right? Yeah.
But I think with the lifelong process is like, what do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? And where can you bring value to a team or to anywhere?
Yeah.
So I think that would be my biggest recommendation for anyone listening here, or just anyone just starting off with a career. Is just go out and do it and figure out what you're good at, and then from there just enhance your ability to get better at it, and then let the work speak for itself.
Well, I'm like kind of getting emotional because just like I just thinking about what you just said, right? It's like not even really knowing where you're going, but then it doesn't matter. You've been given this situation, so figure out what it is that you're good at and go with it. And what was that last thing you said? Like making your work matter. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, just make your work
speak for itself.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
What you said.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, and I think that's something too that I want to talk about because, you mentioned how you never went seeking after these jobs. People recruited you, and it's because you put the work in and it spoke for itself. And I think that says a lot too. You can't just be like, oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, but then have nothing to show for it either. Yeah. Man, and I'm getting emotional too because that piece that you said about just being part of the puzzle or being, part of the body, and understanding that if you are just a finger, you better be the best darn finger that anyone has ever seen,
Yeah.
And maybe you think it's insignificant, but it's not, because like it would be so different if we lived without a finger.
Yeah,
and like yes, it makes so much sense. And me too. I'm like, yes, I just need to be the best mom I can be. But
yes. So I think that's the challenge, right? I mean, that's the whole point of like, I would say this podcast or whatever it may be. It's like, how do you figure out that you are that finger, or like that you are that puzzle, or like you are that corner piece of the puzzle, or like, whatever it may be, So there's a lot of time in my past where I'm saying, like, as I'm working like in the banking industry, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even know what products we sell. I don't know what we do, right? I just know that there's a problem that I've been tasked to solve. And through that, I got recommended to another job. So in that regard, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything from like the day out of college. You don't need to know what major you want. And if you do, great. I mean, I'm not saying that like those are bad things either, right? It's good to like be prepared and plan. Those are all great things as well, right? I'm sure that you can vouch for those things, right? But also at the same time that, life will always throw you curveballs, right? Yeah. Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's a financial crisis, whether it's you realizing that the major that you spent 6-8 years doing isn't for you. I mean, we've heard all of those stories before, right? To say, I thought I was going to become a doctor, and yet I am here doing something completely different.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so you have to understand, like, you can't fight who you are, right? I mean, it sounds like a line from like Lion King, I mean, isn't that the whole point of Lion King? Like he's running away from who he really is, right? So
Yes.
like in that same cheesy analogy, like you are who you are,
Yeah.
and the person that's going to figure out first who you are is yourself. So figure out like what are you good at, what do you love doing, right? Whether it's a tangible, physical trait, like such as I'm good at working on cars, right? That's a physical thing that you know tangibly. Say, I know I'm good at building stuff, right? But there are other stuff that we know that are just as valuable, right? It may not be, I remember in church, like people would say like what everyone's gifts are, and then like you'll go to like the one person where you're just like really trying to like figure out like, oh, like like how do I they're good at like organization.
Yeah.
Or like whatever it may be, like
admin.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like so, and like, but really, like, what does that even mean? Like to be organized. Like, think about the industry that we like. Marie Kondo. Think of like the like all these Netflix shows about just like tidying up or whatever it may be. Like what is that? That's organization. What are they good at? Like, it's funny to think that like someone is famous for like the way that they fold their laundry.
Yeah, but they found their niche, like you're talking about.
Exactly. So everyone has something for them, and whether it's I would be lying to say that everyone is every business major is when they're going to go work for Google or Apple or whatever it may be. Like sure, like those are great aspiring goals, but more often than not, there's a lot of stuff in between your eventual end goal. And I believe I'm on that path as well. Like, I don't see myself, I've never seen myself at Tropical Smoothie Cafe like 10 years ago. Like, number one, it didn't exist. Number two, it's like, I had no idea what I would do at a QSR company. Right? But as you develop skills and as people want those skill sets for their organization, right? You start to realize that skills are not bound by industry or company or anything else. Like skills are definitely what translates into longevity of like your career path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So that I think that would be something that I would encourage anyone. Is like if you don't know, it's okay. Just if you don't know just try to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
Then that will lead you down a certain path.
Definitely. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think the challenge sometimes for, I think, rising college students or whatever is just being inundated with so much like information and social media, and a lot of times like kind of fooling. I mean, I could be completely wrong. This is just where what I think in my perspective, like kind of fooling oneself to believe that you're something because you like it, but you're not really that thing because social media is telling you that you think you like it, but you're not really like that. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And so there's value in actually there's value in actually doing the stuff, right? Like so, for example, like I may I always dream that like I want to be like quit from my job and like go live on the beach or like open my own like I've been grilling a lot, so like open my own barbecue shop or like open my own like coffee shop or like be my own boss and like all these things. And yes, I think in the right time and place, like those are goals that like are realistic and those times. But there is great value in trying the things that you want to do and realizing that maybe it's not for you. Right? The appeal of something is actually more than the actual the labor or like the hard work it takes for you to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, like I hear this a lot where people want to become like these things of not to knock them, doctors, lawyers. I mean, God bless them. Like we need all of those things, right? But in the actual practice, if you can't like handle blood, like you're probably not going to become a good doctor.
Right.
If you can't speak or write eloquently or like think very clearly, then you probably won't be a great lawyer, right? So think about your skill sets and actually try to apply it in a manner in which those professions would actually need that skill set.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
just try writing. You know, if you want to become like a lawyer, are you okay writing 20-page briefs? If not, then you're probably not going to enjoy being a lawyer, right?
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I feel like that's something that I did not think about, back when I was trying to decide what to do with my life. And even when I did decide, it did not turn out the way I planned, just like you said. And recently I was like talking to some college students, and they asked me like, oh, if there's anything you could tell yourself when you were in college, what would it be? And it's like, oh, that nothing goes according to plan and it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, man, a lot of good things, Eugene. Thank you so much for all of the things that you shared. I have more questions actually.
Sure.
So just kind of rewinding a little bit in your story and going back to the beginning after college, for a lot of us, including myself, it was kind of like, I mean, for you in particular, you said you graduated right at the height of, the recession during that time. And like, were you discouraged at all?
Oh yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I'm curious just to know what that felt like for you. I know for me, even not graduating at the height of the recession, I felt like, okay, like my entire life someone told me what I was supposed to be doing, and then I'm supposed to be doing it now, but I'm not doing it, and I don't know, and so I'm just curious to, you majored in marketing, you weren't doing marketing, and then you got this not a random job, but it was at the time.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, definitely.
so like, were you feeling like disconnected or even just kind of like personally let down at all, or?
No, I don't know if it was personal letdown. I think it was more of the fact that so we tie our lives and our accomplishments around like major milestones of like SAT, get into college, graduate from college, get that first job, get that first paycheck, buy your first car, get married, get a house, whatever, retire. Like those are like the major life milestones that we measure ourselves by. And anything in between those things, we think of it as like we're not accomplishing something or we're not doing anything, right? And I would argue that those in betweens are what gets you to that next milestone, right? So yes, to go back to your question of like what would I tell myself 10 years ago, or right when I graduated college, it's like that in between of like you graduating to that next milestone of your first job, like you're gonna learn a lot. Right? You're gonna fail a lot. You're gonna do all this weird. Like I was like an SAT tutor. I sold cell phones. I like did like all these different things where I was just at that point I was just trying to like get a job and just keep myself busy. Right. I mean, a lot of my friends were still in college. Like I graduated like right on time, and so no one's hiring. So I was just like doing whatever I could, but even during those times, it was shaping me into my first job. Like my first job of like being appreciative of like being given an opportunity, knowing that it wasn't readily available, it wasn't given out to anyone. I was referred to that, right? And then from there, going to my next job and my next career path and stuff, so forth. It's always the in betweens where you're just sitting, at your desk and you're swamped with work and you're stressed or whatever it may be. Those are where you're growing the most because it's during those stressful times that you realize like what you're good at and what you thrive in, and it's not during the promotions or during the new jobs. Well, yeah, those are great. Like you're not learning those during those times. You're reaping the benefits of those in between times, right? So I would just challenge people to look at those in between times of like, hey, nothing's happening right now, right? I would argue like, is nothing may be happening, but what are you doing to make something happen, right? Are you growing a skill set? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you talking with people? Are you connecting with people, right? I would say that those skills are just as valuable, if not more, than the actual thing that you're like, you want to be, right?
Right.
So
yeah, man, so many good things right now. I just love this conversation that we're having. Um, but I do kind of have to end it, unfortunately,
Oh, okay.
because coming to a close. But before I do, I have just a couple more questions to round out our time together. And before I do that, was there anything more you wanted to say? Because this is the time, Eugene.
No, I mean, obviously, I'm grateful for the platform or whatever it may be, and I think in there's probably a common theme with like a lot of these, right?
Mm.
Where they didn't know what they wanted to do. They had this, it's it's funny. I was like reading about like the hero's journey of like most stories of
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
there's a central figure. You want something. You go on this magical quest in order to get it. You run into some obstacles. You fail at that. From that failure, you learn something. You learn something great to apply it to your life, and then now you are a better person or a better. And then at that next time that challenge comes up, you are able to conquer it. So that's the hero's journey for like any Game of Thrones or any like
Yeah.
any fan of any story out there, right? But I mean, your life is like that too,
Yeah.
right? Where you are on this quest and you are going to fail, and every time you fail, you are better equipped to handle it the next time. And then the next time you may fail again, but you will get a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, and eventually, once you do get over that hump, you'll be able to say that is now something that I can do with ease, and now let's tackle the next challenge, right? And so life isn't that what life? I mean, not just your career, but isn't that what life is? It's just getting yourself in a position where you can conquer the next
Yeah.
hurdle, and then just growing from there.
Yeah, definitely. Man, I had this like thing with my son today, and like we went to taekwondo class and he did not like it. But there were some personal challenges that got in the way from him really enjoying himself, and I'm thinking about what you just said. I'm like, "Yes, Eli, like you can do this."
First day of taekwondo into becoming a taekwondo master,
Yes.
and exactly. It has to start somewhere, right? It has to start somewhere.
Yes, and I wish my 4-year-old would just understand, he's only 4, but gosh. But anyways, okay, so going back to your job, like your current job at Tropical Cafe Smoothie, or sorry, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, excuse me. What do you, I mean, you kind of already shared with me, but for just to clarify for those that missed it, what is it that you like love about your job? Is there anything that you love?
Well, number one, the culture, right? I mean, like just by nature, we our slogan is that like you are now on tropic time, right? Like, and so what does that mean? So like, and yeah, I mean, we really like to share that in how we work and how we treat each other. So like, I mean, number one, culture, right? And the people are great, right? But also at the same time, it's like we're very supportive of each other, right? So the work in itself, I mean, to be honest, like work will always be there, right? But it's the people that get you through it. It's the mentors that I have that are very supportive of me, that like elevate me, that trust me to do more and more for Tropical Smoothie Cafe. And the it's funny. I just had my like annual review for 2020, like this past week, and my boss was saying, hey, like when I ask you like what is your 3-year goal, your answer should always be is like to have your job, right? And so like, yeah, so that's my mindset is like, how do I grow my skill set to have my boss's job in the next 2-3 years, right? So I'm always on that path of, if I'm not learning, then I am bored, I'm stagnating, and it's probably God telling me that it's time for a new challenge somewhere else, right? So I think that's the biggest thing about Tropical Smoothie Cafe and my job now is that I'm learning and I'm always growing my skill set.
Yeah.
Whether that's just people giving me more opportunities, or I'm carving my own kind of like path in the company to say, hey, this is what I'm good at. I want to be known for this, and so like people come to me for that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I feel like that is such a blessing to be able to be a part of a corporation that's in that type of culture, because I can think of a lot of environments where it's not like that, where they don't encourage you to grow and
Sure.
learn and excel. So, wow, what a blessing that must be. I feel like it would be so life-giving too, right? It's not like suffocating to work in that type of environment. That's really awesome. Okay, so like, what don't you like? What's the worst part of the job?
I mean, the worst part of the job, and by worst, obviously there's just always something, right? Always
Mm,
something comes up. From a support perspective, like always something, like there's always something that comes up by nature. So in that regard, it's a high stress job. You're kind of always your phone is always, my phone is always blowing up emails, and like I have to kind of be able to. With the pandemic, it's been tougher, but I try to say, hey, like at night, I'm not gonna check my emails, like whatever it may be, because it's very easy to just like
right. Yes.
I'm that type where I don't like to see those like notification icons next to my like my email or like
Yeah.
that number creep up, right? And so I like to always keep it clear as much as possible. So, but also at the same time is you need to be able to just unplug from that, just like with anything else. You need to be able to unplug from work. And I think that's been the hardest thing working in this pandemic is that like that line has blurred. Like
Yes, for a lot
the
of
week,
people.
the
Hmm.
weekdays blur into the weekends, the days blur into the nights, kind of thing. So that's been the biggest challenge for me. And back when we were going into the office, right? 5 5:30, 6 o'clock. By the time I'm out. And like you don't really hear from anyone until you come back in the next day, right? Unless
Hmm.
it's an emergency.
Hmm.
But now that like we're just kind of like always available, always kind of always home, right?
Yeah.
It has become tougher to like kind of make that distinction between like when am I done, when am I working, when am I done?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely not alone in that. I feel like a lot of people have had to, for their own mental health, have had to
Sure.
like be like, this is the time I'm going to work, like
Yeah.
specifically, because in the beginning, it was just like people were constantly working all the time
Yeah.
and without even knowing it in the beginning, you
Sure.
know? So yeah, that's definitely, I can't imagine what that must feel like. I'm sure it's a challenge in itself. But yeah, so just to kind of end our time together, I do always ask people if there's any advice that you would give, maybe someone that's listening and thinking, hey, this might be a job that I can see myself in as a problem solver. I like solving problems. I like, being able to have creative outlet in this type of fashion too. Do you have any advice for someone like that? Like, I don't know if there's like, is there a major for this or like, I don't know.
I think that the closest major would probably just be like business,
Uh-huh.
business major and stuff like that. But my advice to anyone that wants to be like in my specific role, like let's say someone was like I'm gonna move on to become like a CEO of some other company, like I need to hire my replacement.
Mhm.
I would say that the number one trait that they need to be able to have is just the flexibility to be able to wear multiple hats, be own what you're good at, right, and just
Mm.
take just right. And so in that regard,
I'm so
I think
sorry.
again.
Hey, you cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is
No,
that
it's
better?
okay. Can you go back to just the beginning? Can you start from what you first?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the advice I would give anyone for someone that wants to go into like a career path such as mine or even my specific role is that you don't need a certain major,
Mm.
you don't need a certain pedigree of college education or certification. Like I didn't have any of that, right? What I did have is an understanding, and by understanding, I didn't know it from the very beginning,
Mm.
but as I was growing in my different, opportunities, I realized that what I was becoming known for, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And as I became known for something, I really tried to live up to those expectations. Number one, and number two is like knock it out of the park, right? It's one thing to have expectations, but it's another thing to meet and exceed those expectations. So
Mm.
that would be kind of my advice for anyone: is like just know what you're good at and just do a damn good job at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just do it well so that no one can ever question like what is it that you're good at and like what can I count on you for.
Yes, I love that. I love it so much. Because I feel like a lot of people don't say it and articulate it the way you just did. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate it. Well, thank you again so much for today and your transparency and your work. I know that you've been really busy, so I really, really do appreciate your time today, Eugene.
Thank you so much for having me, Blair. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So would it be safe to say if someone had questions, could I give you your contact info? Is that
Of course, of
okay?
course.
Awesome. Well, so you guys heard it here. If you guys enjoyed today's podcast and want to have a contact in this specific area of work, please feel free to reach out to me. You can DM me on my social media, excuse me, or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks, guys. Until next time. Bye.